Welcome to Canadian Innovators, the show that celebrates innovation, entrepreneurs, and the Canadian spirit. My name's Catherine Swift, and every week we introduce a new entrepreneur or expert on a relevant business topic to tell their stories and address the challenges of keeping jobs in Canada and discuss potential solutions for job growth and prosperity. Today, I'll be speaking with Sheryl Saperia, CEO of Secure Canada, a nonprofit organization dedicated to combating terrorism and extremism by creating innovative and transformative laws, policies, and alliances that strengthen Canada's national security and democracy. As for Sheryl's background, she's held leadership positions in public policy, advocacy, philanthropy, and government relations. She holds a law degree from the University of Western Ontario and a master's degree from the London School of Economics and Political Science. Welcome to the show, Sheryl.
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine.
Pleasure. Now, we want to talk about security issues today, and naturally, I don't think people realize what an immense importance security is to every Canadian business, and our economy and our society at large. So I don't think a lot of Canadians would likely be aware of Secure Canada. And I know you changed its name recently, so that will be a challenge to get the new name recognized. But your former organization was called CCAT, the Canadian Coalition Against Terror. So could you give us some background on the organization and some of its major objectives?
Yes, with pleasure. Well, I started in my role as chief executive about a year ago, and we made a strategic decision not just to rebrand as Secure Canada, but also to come out of the shadows a little. Our work in the past has often been behind the scenes. Secure Canada develops fresh, innovative ideas to help stimulate the legislative and policy-making process. Unfortunately, citizens can't always count on government to keep them safe. Governments can be slow, resistant to change, and it can be hard for them to adapt quickly to evolving threats like terrorism. Governments are also not imaginative, and remember that 9/11 was called a failure of imagination by US officials. So, our organization, Secure Canada, is part of civil society, which, in my view, is an integral component alongside government in fighting terrorism and extremism. You mentioned our mission statement earlier. We use three key tools to fight the bad guys: laws, policies, and alliances. And we're doing some cutting edge things in those three areas. So, just by way of example, one of our most dramatic achievements was drafting and advocating for a bill that allows victims of terror and their families to file civil lawsuits against local and state sponsors of terror. So it was again taking this problem of terrorism and looking at it through a different angle. And the comments we would get was, well, you can't sue the terrorist who's hiding in his cave. And we said, exactly, we're not looking to sue the terrorist who's hiding in his cave. We're looking to sue the sponsors of terror, the people who don't want to be publicized in that way and who do have assets and who are allowing terrorism to occur. So ultimately, our goal is to strengthen Canada's national security and democracy, and it's to protect Canadians from threats like aggressive authoritarianism, violent extremism, terrorism itself, and malicious foreign interference as well.
What do you see as some of the key impediments in Canada that stand in the way of achieving your goals?
I would say probably the biggest impediment is that Canada doesn't take its national security seriously
Yeah.
enough. In 1924, a senator said that Canadians live, this is such a good line, that Canadians live in a fireproof house far from inflammable materials. And our national philosophy hasn't changed much since. And it's not just the fault of politicians, it's partly the fault of politicians, but not entirely. There was a 2016 Ipsos poll that found Canadians were much less concerned about the threat of terrorism than people in most other countries. Look, my colleagues and I don't want to scare people, but we also need them to wake up. There are dark, violent winds blowing across the world, and Canada is not immune. And in a really important report just issued, I believe, a month ago by the Business Council of Canada, they expressed concern that Canada's closest allies are taking note of Ottawa's reluctance to confront growing security threats, and that this likely contributed to Canada's exclusion from a recent security partnership between the United States, the UK, and Australia.
Yeah, that has been very, very disturbing and very public. Now, we're going to have to take a quick break now, but please stay tuned to Canadian Innovators.